Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Monsters Den. We're down to the trio of Davey Gallagher, Dan Brown, and myself for tonight. Our final episode of 2024. Jamie Laszlo is getting ready to drive to New York for Sea of Tranquility Fall Fest. Craig Kaminsky's at a concert. Chris Allo had some other engagement. So we are going to man the fort here tonight and kind of wrap up the year in films and releases on disc. So what we've done is we've kind of looked at the year, picked out some of our favorite 2024 releases and our favorite 2024 films, right? Specifically movies that got released this year. And we've picked out some of our favorites. Chances are we've probably talked about these movies before on the show. So today is not about talking a lot about what the films are all about, but really just kind of going over some of our favorites and quickly why they made our favorites list. So again, welcome Dan Brown, David Gallagher. How are you guys?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Getting ready for Fall Fest. Holidays are a couple weeks away. Getting over
Oh
a
yeah,
cold. It's just it's the way things go.
Tis the season to. I can't be bothered.
Tis the
season.
season to have sniffles. La, 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 la. What are you gonna do? But I'm looking forward to having some food and drink and discussions with my comrades on Sea of Tranquility as well as our viewers over the weekend. Should be lots of fun. So can't wait for it. We don't do these things too often, so Dan and I have been very busy in behind the scenes trying to make this whole thing happen. Dan's done a lot of great work here, and I think it'll be a really fun time. So we're looking
That's
forward.
because I'm the caterer.
That's right. It's his folks are gonna be cooking all the food, so
Oh, there you go.
cooking all the food, getting that stage ready, and making sure the taps are all going. And yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. So anyway, speaking of Dan, so Dan, so what do you guys want to do first? You want to do our disc releases or our films of the year? Doesn't really matter.
Oh, films. I don't really go to the film movies that much. I used to do all my stuff on disc. So I think I'm going to say, I will go with, gee whiz, discs. So I'll start with discs.
Okay, all right. What do you got?
Um, well, for starters, let me see. I was a big fan of A Quiet Place by John, was that Krasinski? Then Quiet Place 2, which I was saying, okay, there are a lot of places that have sophomore blues. They're not good films. They're okay. Sometimes they very seldom will surpass the first film, like a Empire Strikes Back, say, over Star Wars. But they announced they were going to do Quiet Place the first day. And like, okay, here we go. Are we running? Are we going to jump the shark? What are we doing here? And honestly, I was so pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
how they handled it. They touched upon like the first day, if anybody's familiar, A Quiet Place 2, who was from the John Krasinski and his family in their town and how it all started. But this takes place in New York. You all know about the film, but it's just it starts out to me a little bit cliched, okay, and then it just had me edge of my seat. And it's more about just human drama and how much you love a cat. And it's just I'm not going to go into it. Most people have probably seen it. But I was so shocked and surprised that here you come with a third time around, you go with a prequel, and it is strong enough on its own as any type of a film, any type of genre, but it's really a great starting point for that whole series. And I'd like to know if, in fact, they go another chapter, what they're going to do next. But so far, I think they've been home runs across the board, all three of those
Yeah,
films.
I've enjoyed all three of them, and
Now,
Davey and I did a whole episode dedicated to it, and we both remarked about how great the characters were. It was such
mhm.
a
Yeah.
character-driven
Well, you
story.
cared about the characters.
Yeah,
What I thought
Damn
was
packed.
remarkable is they got the director of Pig, the Nicolas Cage film from 2021, which is a stunning film, a very character-driven film,
Mhm.
and I worried, oh, is this going to turn into a franchise thing for him? You know, like Marvel, they always hire the hot indie directors, but then you would never know that they were a good indie director from when you see the Marvel movie because it's just explosions and laser beams in the sky. Who cares? This felt like Pig. It had the same mentality, it had the same feel, and it didn't feel like the first two Quiet Days. The Quiet Places, sorry. I mean, Pete and I talked about it, but that scene in the jazz club is one of the most beautiful things I've seen in cinema all year. Stunning. Joseph Quinn's performance, amazing. Again, he's now been lost to Marvel because he's Johnny Storm in the new Fantastic Four. And Lupita Nyong'o, wonderful.
Yeah, and that cat. Come on.
Yeah,
Yeah, Bilbo, wasn't it? Bilbo the cat.
I think so.
Bilbo
Yeah.
the cat.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well done.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Good film. That easily probably makes my list as well. I enjoyed that.
My second pick is something that, for me, pays homage to many genres. It is from Universal Pictures. It is a vampire film entitled Abigail. And I had no idea what I was getting into with this when I first looked at this film. But let me tell you something. It pulls first off. Universal Studios had attempted to like reboot the MonsterVerse or create this MonsterVerse. And although I like the Wolfman in 2010, which is not the one that was rebooting it, they kind of dropped the ball along the line and lost a lot of money on the Mummy and so forth. I looked at Abigail, which comes, well, distributed through Universal. I don't know if it's produced by Universal Studios, but it is distributed by them. And to me, this is the way that Universal's horror series should start itself over again. New characters, new stories, standalone films. Don't worry about having team ups, and I just think this has a lot going for it. It plays from anything from Agatha Christie's, and then there were none, to a particular Saw film where they're locked in a house. And it even starts out, as David and I were discussing before the show started. The opening theme is a ballet sequence where they're doing the theme from Swan Lake, which is Dracula's theme in the first Universal Dracula film. It also pulls heavily, not heavily, but it's inspired, in my impression, a film I've mentioned in the past. I've tried to turn Craig on to it. It's a film called Livid, which is a kind of a vampire fantasy fairy tale uh, about people that break into a house and they encounter a woman laying in bed. They're going to steal things, but you find out there's a ballet dancer in there that just sits there in a catatonic state. And it's just very much of a fantasy film, but it pulls over this because how it starts, this film, is that there's a young girl playing ballet. She is kidnapped by 5 or 6 people and brought to an undisclosed location. They are kidnapping her to, in fact, ransom her off to her father or to her father, which these 5 or 6 people do not know who this person is until they do find out. Well, you also find out that all of these people are involved in the kidnapping, okay, all have been associated somewhere along the line, very much in any great mystery novel, to the main character, which is this gangster or this overlord. Little girl's an innocent little girl in a ballet costume, but then it gets just kind of weird, man. I mean, they sit there and the they are trapped in the house. They come out, they're going to come out at dawn, they're going to be paid $50 million. And then somewhere along the line, they find out that the gangster is a notorious Middle European gangster. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Kind of like a Kaiser Soze, but he is a vampire. And this is his daughter. But the whole gist is, why did they get everybody into this house? Why did they trap them in there? It's a lot deeper than it seems, and it has twists and turns in the end. Um, the homages that pay to Universal Films is that there's a sequence in the opening sequence. There's also a scene in the end with a fight with the vampires, and the little girl jumps up on a railing on a staircase. And it just reminded me right away in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, where the Wolfman jumps up on some equipment before he dives on Frankenstein. She almost takes
I
the
haven't
same,
even seen the film, and I knew exactly what you were going to say there.
she almost takes the same exact body pose as Lon Chaney Jr. But it's just got twists, turns, some comedy, some humor, a fair amount of blood and gore. And I'm not going to go too much in the plot, but I highly recommend that you watch it because it really was, to me, a fresh start for Universal to make horror films again, but also a great standalone vampire film, which is a little bit different and a little bit unique for a change. And it's an innocent little girl. It's not some Chris Sarandon or it's not going to be Bill Paxton in Near Dark. It's not going to be something like this. It's just a little girl that's just going to eat your shit up, so to speak. But one highly recommended, and that is Abigail. It is available now on Blu-ray, 4K, Blu-ray and DVD, not 4K. But
Yeah,
that's my two films that I have selected for this evening.
cool. I've got to see that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, we talked about it last month, but it's interesting that Universal are doing what you're saying, Dan, because we had The Invisible Man a couple of years ago, done as a an abuse drama,
Right,
and
with
we're
Rich
we're
Eisen.
we're now getting a revisionist take on The Wolfman that's out. Is it
Right.
late this year or early next year? I think.
Hmm.
That's Universal's deconstruction of the Wolfman. So they're doing them as these down gritty dramas.
Hmm.
And Abigail's kind of the outlier there as a kind of take on Dracula's daughter. It's very much a horror
I
comedy,
think that was
really.
the original title of the film. They were
Um,
actually thinking of calling it Dracula's Daughter.
yeah, which I guess that would ruin the
Yeah.
twist, but they do that in the trailers anyway. Which, as I said last month, I think they should have tried to sell it as a heist film with a little girl and not revealed the twist in the trailers, but Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Davey, over to you.
Look, look. Well, I'll just batter in because I've got quite a few things. So, television-wise, a few discs this year that really impressed me, or just the broadcast impressed me, and then I picked up the disc. So I'm kind of integrating everything into one rather than separating cinema from the disc. Generation Z, which is a zombie three-parter that came out, four-parter that came out just a few months ago on Channel 4 over here. It's from Ben Wheatley, who directed Kill List, Sightseers, A Field in England. Great director. Unfortunately, he also directed The Meg 2, but everybody's got to eat. He goes back to his roots here by doing a kind of deconstruction of a genre film. In this case, it's a zombie film, which has been done to death, pardon the pun. But, we're all a bit zombied out, really. Well, this finds an interesting way to do it, where it's a bunch of Gen Zers, and the small town that they're in England. There's a spillage, a gas leak from a van on the edge of town, which causes people to turn into zombies, essentially. But it kills younger people fast. But for older people, it puts them in this kind of zombie state for a good while before they die. And they're eating the young before they go. They become flesh eaters. And it's a really fun take on how to do a zombie film. And without beating you over the nose with it, but it does mention it, it's kind of a commentary on the thing that we've all been dealing with a lot and over the last 10 years, populism and whatnot, about generation divides and how different groups, different age groups, if specifically in here they talk about how um, Brexit was caused by older people voting against their own children and grandchildren's future, that kind of thing. So it becomes literally the old generation eating their young. But it doesn't go too far down that rabbit hole to be preachy without always remembering you need to be funny at the same time. So you always get a really over the top kill next to it. It's a really fun, really over the top, brilliantly acted television show with some great character actors who you would just never imagine would be in this kind of thing. Sue Johnston, Robert Lindsay, just great character actors. Johnny Vegas is even on it. Um, Blake Seven. Um, Normally at this time of year, I talk about Doctor Who because they release a Doctor Who set every 6 months or so on Blu-ray. But this also came out this year, so to highlight it, this was alongside Doctor Who around about the later Tom Baker period, BBC's biggest sci-fi show. Essentially a predecessor to the likes of Firefly, Serenity, that kind of thing. Bunch of outlaws on the run in space up against the evil Federation. But just ridiculously fun, ridiculously British, ridiculously low budget. If you don't like classic Doctor Who, don't even bother. But if you do, then it will be 100% up your street. On Blu-ray with new effects, looking absolutely fantastic. absolutely sensational. And then to round off the television part, Severin released this, which Dario Argento's deep cuts, and this is a good chunk of his television work. So it gives you two discs of what's it called? Door, so it's in Italian here. Door into Darkness, which is really the main reason to have it here. It's his anthology show. You also get bits and pieces where he didn't produce a whole show, but maybe he did an episode, so that gets thrown in as a short, essentially. So you get about 3.5 hours essentially of Dario Argento shorts on top of a whole Dario Argento TV show. And you get things direct to Umberto Bava, Cozzi. You get all sorts thrown in here where it goes from zombie things to more political techie things, which is a genre that he did a lot more than people realize if they only think of his big films. But he did a lot of crime films as well. And then a lot of more kind of animal trilogy like things where things are just a bit more uncanny rather than straight out gory or whatnot. They're just a bit more something wrong here, and then you get a twist at the end kind of thing. So, yeah, for Dario Argento fans, this is pretty essential because you wouldn't have seen most of this, or if you have, because I've only seen a couple of things, and I'm pretty well up on Argento, then you wouldn't have seen them in this quality. Just like Blake Seven, the caveat is it's vintage television from Italy from 40 odd years ago up to 50 years ago. So it's not pristine, wasn't shot in film in a lot of cases, but it looks as good as it's going to. Some of it's mediocre at best, some of it's not great, but at its peak, it's wonderful Argentoness. So, yeah, for what you can get at Foreign Severn's website, just snap it up.
Yeah, that looks like a must buy.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
picked up when it came out. Well, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah, it's quite a. That's also been one of the issues. Is not I didn't want to pick anything that I haven't had time to watch all of. So the new folk horror box set, for example, from Severin, it only came last week, so I've not had a chance to watch all those bloody discs. So it'd be a bit disingenuous to pick it for something like this when I've not had the chance to really settle down with it yet. So, but we have plenty of episodes ahead to do that, I'm sure. So.
Cool. All right. Let me see. I'll do let me do brand new films first, and then I'll do my favorite disc releases afterwards. So, and this is also one of my favorite discs of the year, but Dune Part Two,
Mm.
fucking spectacular. I mean, I saw it in the theaters, absolutely loved it. I watched it paper, on cable or whatever, on Peacock or whatever the hell it was streaming on, and then I watched it on the 4K disc, which is mind-blowingly great. So, so good. I'm also going to pick Late Night with the Devil. I haven't gotten it yet, but I've seen it. I loved it. I think that's a lot of fun. I also loved Oddity this year. If anybody hasn't seen Oddity, that's a really fun film. Very creepy, very original. I like that a lot. I think that I saw that on Shudder, if I remember correctly. And I also really like Longlegs a lot. And we talked about this on a recent episode. I think this is great. I'm
Yeah.
a sucker for really well done serial killer films, and I think Nicolas Cage is amazing in this. But even if you take him out of it, it's still a really cool, tense film. And also, I love Furiosa. I
Mm.
really enjoy. I liked it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's probably not as good as the film that came before it,
Yeah.
but I've seen it. I probably watched it 4 times already. I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. I just love these films. I think it's a really, really well done. Again, it's not as mind-blowingly spectacular as the one that came before it, which to me, I think visually,
Yeah.
action-wise, probably is the best of the series. But this is still a lot of fun, and Chris Hemsworth steals the film.
He's the best thing in it.
He
Yeah.
totally, totally steals the film.
Because I was so looking forward to seeing Anya Taylor-Joy. As it turns out, she's hardly in the bloody movie.
She's like an
It's
afterthought, right? Yeah, it's like
it's mostly the young Furiosa who we follow, who's great.
yeah.
But that's fine because how often is Max in some of those bloody movies?
Yeah,
Max hardly was in Fury Road. So as long as the film's good. My only issue was it was just a bit too similar to Fury Road.
Yeah,
Um,
kind of. It's
um,
similar look and feel and everything like that. But I thought it was lots of fun, and I enjoyed it. So, and there's plenty of other films that have been very highly rated by people this year that I just haven't gotten around to seeing. It's usually I find with a lot of movies, you wind up playing catch up. And I've seen lots of very solid movies on like I've been trying to watch more on Shudder. I pay for the damn subscription, but half the time I don't watch anything on it. I think I did a much better job of watching stuff on Shudder this year, so I did get to catch a bunch of films. I really like that stop motion photography one. I can't remember the name of it.
Stop motion.
Yeah, that
Eternals.
that was pretty cool. Um,
Um,
there have been others. I've seen a whole bunch of them on there, so I caught some good ones this year. But
that is what it was called, wasn't it? Just stop motion. That yeah,
So,
yeah, it was just called that. Yeah,
yeah,
the Charles Band one.
yeah.
Charles Band.
Stop. Stop motion. Yeah, it was just called stop motion. I'm doubting myself, and I know that's the right answer, but
yeah,
final answer, Pete.
yeah.
Stop motion.
There you go. So a lot of good stuff. It was a pretty good year for horror, I think, overall. And I haven't seen like Smile 2, which I heard is pretty solid. I like the first one. I haven't bothered to see Terrifier. Not that I'm really a terrorizer. But just
Terrifying.
No
um,
rush to see that for some reason. I don't
not
know.
really all that interested because after the
Well,
first one,
I took the hit, and so did Chris, so that nobody else needs to. But we should mention Jamie's before we forget, shouldn't we?
yes, yes,
Jamie sent us some pics. So he sent Strange Darling, which I've seen too, which is a wonderful. You think it could just be a Bonnie and Clyde thing with Cale Gallner and what's her name? Willow. Will I forget her name or not? Whatever her name is, Willa Fitzgerald. That rings a bell. But yeah, fantastic. He's phenomenal in it, and it's got a wonderful tone, a wonderful vibe to it, very retro throwback grindhouse tone. And then a couple of films that he has talked about before, The Devil's Bath and Oddity. He also mentioned.
yeah. Devil's Bath I caught as well. That was pretty good. I like that. That's a very bleak film, but yeah, it was good. Yeah, he also sent me and I'll mention him afterwards, but he sent me some pics as well for like disc releases for this year, like archival stuff that was released this year. Dan, you got anything else to?
Well, I've got. I'm just gonna go with TV with one thing that I was pretty impressed with and watch it, and that is the Colin Farrell version of the Penguin. I guess on Showtime, which I was. I'll put it this way: there've been so many DC Universe has always they can't seem to get it together with many things. They've done so many reboots and things of Superman, and there's been so many Batmans, and it's like then they're realizing Michael Keaton was the best Batman out of all of them. As much shit as he got when he was first announced back in the '80s to play Batman. What, that guy? Um, but so I was really hesitant to go see the film The Batman, I think it's called, with uh, Pattinson, Robert
With your friend Robert Pattinson
Robert
from
Pattinson. That's
your
correct.
favorite franchise. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I have a hard time. I can't, not that not that I don't mind looking at him in leather, but it's okay. He, but anyhow, Penguin came on, so I'm scoring around looking at things as what you're gonna watch on cable or streaming, and I start watching the first episode. And I'm going, what is this all about here? The opening of the sequence, and what you have to do is you really have to watch The Batman because this is actually a sequel that takes place pretty much from the end of the
Directly
Batman.
after. Yeah.
So I watched the Batman, and I'll be quite frank, I liked the film. He was a bit brooding, he was psychotic, but I just love the way the villains were portrayed in the Batman, as opposed to over the top, garish '60s themed cartoon characters. They're like the Rorschachs, they're like the Watchmen of DC villains. And of course, in this film, Colin Farrell plays the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot, but he's only like an underling to one of the big gangsters. So they create, or Falcone, and they create a whole series about the Penguin starting from that. But this, I'll put it this way, I'm glad that DC has embraced the Frank Miller concept, the Alan Moore concept of just crazy, psychotic, dual personality people. Because the Penguin, aside from being just a gangster film where he's just a hardcore gangster, he's a sociopath. He's a killer. He doesn't care. I mean, has a mommy complex, and the whole thing. And it is just so dark. There's a couple parts in that series where I actually went, holy shit, I can't believe he did that. But yet you're rooting for him because he is kind of an underdog. And the whole thing is just so dark and over the top, not over the top, under the top, that it's unsettling, but it just plays out like a noir gangster. And honestly, you could see where he is actually inspired by Tony Soprano
Yeah.
or James Gandolfini because he does
Certainly talks like him, right?
yeah. And I just like it.
Yeah,
I like the effect. I mean, everybody that's played the Penguin over the years has put their own individual stamp on it. Whether it be the comics, books, and then Burgess Meredith and the TV show, which was camp, and then we went in, to Danny DeVito, and then even going to the series Gotham. Same. They
oh
had
yeah,
similar qualities, but
Robin Lord Taylor, I think was
yes,
his name. Yeah,
but they all, but the thing is that Colin Farrell seems to take, other than the campiness of the 60s, he just takes every one of those personas and rolls it into one of this brooding, hulking, I mean, the guy is basically, like I said, he is a depraved human being, but you feel sorry for him. You want him to get away because actually most of the people around him are crazy and depraved too. And not to give it away, but at the end of the first season, after he's finally accomplished his goal and becomes the Penguin of who he's supposed to be, or basically the equivalent of Kingpin from the Marvel universe, what do you see in the sky? The bat signal.
Yeah.
So but it's just well done. I couldn't wait to watch the next episode. Uh, Kudos to DC, for doing this and taking a step and realizing it's not all special effects and one-liners and so forth and so on. This is just pretty gritty, raw, and it really captures what Gotham
Great
City is.
characters, great actors.
Oh,
Although, does anybody know why DC decided to call him Cobb?
Bob. Yeah,
yeah,
I guess
Cobb.
Cobblepot isn't Italian, and he's supposed to be Italian in it. So, it could be a shortened version of an Italian name, perhaps, that his family have changed, because Cobblepot's very, that's distinctly English, isn't it? So,
Wait, when I think Cobblepot, you just think of Danny DeVito just waddling around. He's psychotic
um,
too, but he's waddling around. So
I mean,
Cobblepot is it?
I really like the show, but I feel like it has pacing issues in the middle, where it does turn into the Sophia Falcone show for quite a while.
She's
She's
great.
great. She's
Yeah.
great. But it stops kind of remembering what it is. And it's interesting, because I had quite a few problems with the Batman
Okay.
because I thought it was far too long. I thought it was a really great crime thriller, and then it decided it had to be an action movie in the last 45 minutes and completely lost me.
It was long.
Completely
Yeah,
lost
no,
me.
it was 3 hours.
It did not need that host. After the Riddler's caught, I'm done. I'm done with that film. But I liked the tone of this because the comics that it reminded me of, in my much more limited knowledge, it's not the Frank Miller stuff. It's more the Jeff Loeb,
Mhm.
Long Halloween, Dark Victory, that kind of era.
Which are all
Uh,
very much a part of the whole Falcone versus
Maroni
Right.
all
Empire,
the mob
and,
bosses.
and a lot of Selena Kyle, especially in Dark Victory, and she gets a kind of spin off in Rome and whatnot, which something kind of factors in that might tie into her later on in the show. Colin Farrell's fantastic in it. I think again the problem with the film, not that we're reviewing the film, but apparently we are now. The film is so grounded, gritty, dark, and emo that he was almost a bit too over the top fun in that universe. So taking him out and putting him in something for himself works a lot better for me.
Yeah,
But then again, in the film, he was just a very small part. On that
yeah.
one scene in particular, he was just a real small facet.
Plus, I couldn't get over the fact that Batman was just knocking on nightclub doors to get in. That's not fucking Batman. Come on.
It's
He finds a way in. He doesn't fucking do 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 do.
Well,
Hi, it's me, Batman.
swinging on the disco ball.
looking for the penguin. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
There was
didn't.
one really distracting thing though. The recast for a flashback, Falcone, with
And Billy John Turturro. Well, he
um,
probably wanted too much money. Who knows? Or maybe he
no, I
was.
said it was too anti-feminist, and they didn't want to come back. But it was just a bit distracting. All of a sudden, Mark Strong's there, and he's already been the villain in the Thingy movie, yeah, Shazam, just a few years ago, and it's kind of like, does everybody get to do not just one comic book thing these days, but five? You know, which they kind of ripped the piss out of this year with Deadpool Wolverine, didn't they? Where Chris Evans turns up and he's not playing Captain America, he's playing,
And Johnny Storm once again. Yeah.
yeah. So kind of ripping the piss out of the fact that these people do get multiple chances. Ben Affleck, Daredevil, and Batman, that kind of thing.
It's not like there aren't enough actors out there to play all these characters, right?
Yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke. That's why I'm all for something like DC casting David Cornsweet as Superman, who we saw in Peril as the projectionist with the dark side. So he's the new Superman. It's funny that Dan mentioned DC and their constant reboots because their new one started today as we were recording with the animated, what are they called? The Creature Commandos.
Okay.
That's the first new DCU project from James Gunn, Creature Commandos, and that's today.
Oh,
But
wow.
I've not watched it, so
I'm like halfway through uh the 3 episode. Oh God, I'm drawing a blank on the title of it. I'll think of it. It's based on a book that graphic novel that DC put out. What the hell's it called? I'm drawing a blank. I got the old. It's late. I'll think of it. But anyway, I watched the first 2 parts of it. There's 3 of them. The God, what is it called? I probably have it right over there too. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Davey. I'll go look it up.
all right, all right. I'll throw in a couple of things that are non Monsters Den just because we've had,
Crisis on Infinite Earth.
What?
what?
Crisis on Infinite Earth.
Oh, I hated that so much. It was so padded. Oh, it was like, and then they came out like 4 months apart, and I'm like, so
Yeah.
what did Doctor Fate do in the last one? And I'm supposed to remember what Barry Allen's a bad guy, but he's now a good guy, but he time travel back to be about.
The novel is cool, but it's very convoluted. But it's just, I think this, again, I haven't finished all of them, but did it need to be each one 90 minutes? I don't know.
Yeah, and they're doing that again at the moment as we speak with Watchmen. That's getting the animation treatment with part two was out this week, I think,
No.
where they're doing that as a three-parter, which we get it, guys. We get it. Just read the bloody comics.
Yeah.
Right, so films. My favorite comedy of the year is Hundreds of Beavers, which is the indie sensation of the year. Vinegar Syndrome announced a version of this, and they sold the 1000 slipcase edition within about 20 minutes. It just sold like hotcakes because this is, well, it's just genius comedy. Imagine Wes Anderson directing Looney Tunes, and you're kind of halfway there to that kind of how bizarre the vibe is. It's an Applejack who um, wants to marry this girl, but the father says you have to go and collect coats of squirrels or you can't marry my daughter. But it's done in such an over the top Looney Tunes, Tex Avery style. Um, some I've seen quite a few people say it's Chaplin-esque. I think they're just saying that because it's black and white and it's set in the snow, and they're thinking it's like the Gold Rush. No, it's not. It's not Charlie Chaplin's sense of humor at all. It's very surreal. It's very over the top. It's very silly. I'd love somebody like I'm a massive Looney Tunes fan connected with the channel. Chuck Alvarez. I'd love to know what he thinks of something like this because it's that sense of humor, but done as an indie comedy in black and white in 2024.
Never
It
even heard
is
this before.
it is brilliant. Hundreds of beavers. You can't. It's one of those films you can't really describe because the plot that I just said there, that's about it for the plot. There's not much happening beyond that, and then it's just scenarios in which he has to kill beavers, and the beavers are trying to get their own back, and it's not literal beavers. It's guys dressed in beaver costumes, but in the narrative, it is actual beavers. And then there's beavers dressed as Sherlock Holmes and Watson trying to solve it who's been killing all the beavers. It is ridiculous. It is over the top nonsense in the best possible way, but it's filmed with this dry sense of humor that's just Wes Anderson or uh, John Lurie, who worked with what's his name, Jim Jarmusch quite a lot. Fishing with John was one of his shows.
John, yes.
It's got that kind of vibe to it, that kind of real kind of fun but over the top, with an underlying darkness and cynicism. But yeah, hundreds of beavers. I can't recommend this highly enough. Just give it a go. Um, as promised, folks. Vincent Price's Cookery Blu-ray. In case anybody thought I was bullshitting about this. Cooking price wise, yeah, very 70s as you can imagine. It's not actually on our picks. I'm not going to go into a 10-minute tirade about how wonderful his courgettes are. Um, the BFI did a stunning job. Last episode I showed their new edition of Seven Samurai. They have a recent edition of Ikiru, which is one of my favorite Kurosawa films, one of the saddest films ever made. An old civil servant who's kind of wasted his life, finds out that he's dying, and forms a relationship with a young woman. And for the first time in his life, now that he's dying, he finds that he actually might have a reason to live after all. Stunning, stunning stuff that really shows that there's no such thing as foreign films. There's only really world cinema because emotions like that translate any national boundaries, any time, any distance. Wonderful stuff from Kurosawa, given supreme treatment from the BFI with wonderful contextual extras, all sorts. A film that I picked when we did our uh, non-genre favorites a couple of years ago, The Third Man, has got a lovely big box set edition from Studio Canal, which gives you the a pop-up of the famous Vienna scene with the cuckoo clock speech, and when you lift it up, you get a... Is that coming across? No. Zoom's not picking it up, but it's playing really loud here. Zoom blocks music. But
Oh,
right now I can hear the dun 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 dun. Dun. If this was going to StreamYard, you'd be deafened by now.
I know.
But Zoom automatically blocks out music for content reasons. But yeah, this plays that every time you open the thing. So sometimes when I'm just going in to get the booklet, I nearly shit myself because all of a sudden there's other being played right in my face. Right, let's do some bloody horror then, just to get this out of the way. Well, one that means a lot to me this year because it was such a dream for me to be able to interview him was the Criterion upgrading this about the same time. Repo Man from Alex Cox, to have him on my channel was just a delight. He said he could spare about 20 minutes. We talked for 2 hours. And afterwards, I said, "I'm really sorry. You never gave me the kind of signal." And he went, "Yeah,
No.
I was just enjoying it." So great, great. So there's about an hour's worth of outtakes that I'm not sure I could broadcast, to be honest, without being demonetized. Um, I almost took this off the list, given something that's happened this week. Godzilla minus one. We talked about it in the group chat. This is just out, and I mean just out. It came out this week in the UK. It's already been announced there's a deluxe version coming with an English audio track, which fine, I wouldn't be watching anyway, but hey, I'd like to bloody have it. New commentary and a new documentary. And then something else, can't remember what, but all for $25 on 4K, which is cheaper than this. So
Yes.
for less money, more extras, which fuck you very much.
yeah.
Yeah, ridiculous. However, I don't want to penalize the director and the stars and the producer and whatnot, because that's just a decision taken by physical media companies trying to make hay while the sun shines. So, I mean, we covered this in an episode last year. We don't need to go into what a bloody film. I think most of us said it was our favorite Godzilla film now, pretty much, certainly in the serious realm. But yeah, stunning. Looks great as well. Oh yeah, the Godzilla Black and White is the other extra you're getting on that new version, isn't it? Godzilla in black and white, which, contrary to popular belief, just like when Fury Road did that, it isn't just literally just turning off the color. They do go back and change the color timing and the grading and whatnot. So it's not just a case of turning off the color on your TV does the same thing. Uh, this was always going to be on my very top, just about Blood and Satan's Claw, released in 4K this year. 88 have done an amazing job with the Tygon library. They've only got one release left to come out. One had to be cancelled for licensing reasons, The Virgin Witch, which is fine. It's just a pretty bad sexploitation movie anyway. But this is one of my favorite films, never mind favorite horror films. So to get this on not just 4K, but a stunning 4K, a really great looking 4K, which looks fresh and vibrant. It came out the same day as Witchfinder General, but if I could only choose one, it's always going to be this for me. Great. Starvaker folk horror, which came out this year, starring the 11th Doctor himself, Matt Smith, currently heading up screens on what's it called, House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spin-off, as Prince Aegon, and also starring Morfydd Clark, who's not quite tearing up screens because people tend to hate this show, but she's Galadriel in the new Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power TV show. So you're getting two icons of current fantasy in a folk horror, which is folk horror 101, really. It's a really simple story. A couple lose their child, and then something happens where the land itself seems to give them a gift. But, the monkey's paw, be careful what you wish for, kind of thing. And as I always say, something that is central to folk horror, and quite a few of the films on volume two of the folk horror box set miss this. The land itself needs to be evil. The evil needs to come from the ground up. And that does. That film very much does. It's deep, it's dark, it's disturbing, but it's simple as well. And it hits hard. It's a wonderful film with sensational performances, set in the 1970s and filmed as such. So it's not as Tarantino would do with what was the Grindhouse movie, Death Proof, wasn't it, that he did? It's not as gimmicky as that, but it just looks like it's filmed at the same time as one of the M.R. James Ghost Stories for Christmas or the Stone Tape or something like that, etc., etc. And then to top us off, well, Pete said that his hasn't turned up yet, so I think I should show The Name of the Devil, which is my number one of the year. This is the Umbrella version from Australia, which has completely different extras, comes with all sorts of wonderful little oddities that are added in here. It even comes with a VHS, which is the broadcast version that, as we covered in the episode on this, the thing itself has backstage bits and whatnot. This shows you what you would have seen if you were only watching the show that night, the Night Owl show. So this gives you just the edited version of the show, which is pretty great. But that's not enough, of course, because curses are real, etc., etc. So here's the American Steelbook with completely different extras, which has got a commentary from David Dashiellmain on it, which is not on this. So you need to get two versions if you want to get it all. And then, of course, you need to get the 4K, which is only out in the UK. So you need the third version. This has got completely different extras again, including a director's commentary, which is not on the other two versions. This has got a 72-page hardbound book. This has got postcards, an air freshener. It's got all sorts. You could go on and on and on with this kind of stuff, but yeah, that's my film of the year and my release of the year once I combine them all into one super edition there. The
Like them
super
all.
deluxe of Late Night with the Devil, which is yeah, go back and watch that episode that we did on it for anybody who wants to know our thoughts. Quite a few people in the panel didn't like the ending. I thought the ending is what makes it special and
I
stopped
loved
it
it.
being
Yeah,
just another film, to be honest. I
yeah, I
loved the
loved
ending.
it. I thought it was lots of fun. Yeah, but that what you just showed is just how ridiculous it's getting nowadays with all these releases that you have to go and buy three separate releases, probably well over $100 there, US, to have all that you got there. Which why don't they just release it all in one set to begin with, you know?
Yeah, well, you have to get your Christgau air freshener, and your little signed photo of Jack from blah 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 blah. But hey, it's fun. And when it's your favorite film of the year, you don't mind too much, I suppose. But
The VHS tape is an interesting touch.
Yeah.
If you're
yeah, I thought that was a real nice novelty for a change. So I've set up the video and I transferred onto DVD and put that inside the case so that I don't need to pull out a VCR player every time I want to watch that. So
Yeah, who's doing that anymore, right? You know, yeah, for sure.
yeah, which I'm not a big fan of that. It's starting to creep in again. Seven are doing that, bringing out VHS releases. No, no, we don't go back. Just like a lot of bands are bringing out cassettes. No,
No,
no.
yeah, no thanks. All right. I could have pulled out a bunch more, but I picked two that I think really impressed me. You know, other than like I said, I already showed Dune, which I think for me is probably the most impressive 4K genre 4K of the year. But we just covered it recently, but I do want to re-mention this great Criterion set that has I Walk with a Zombie and The Seventh Victim. This is just great. Really, really great stuff. Top notch from Criterion, and two great films that we've talked about. We were waiting and waiting, waiting for it to come in this format, and it did not disappoint one bit. And I do want to throw this out because it's one of my favorite films of all time, and I really, really like the 4K a lot. And it's funny because I remember when the Blu-ray came out, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever need to get a 4K on this. And then the 4K came out, and I read some really good reviews. I said, screw it, I love the movie, I'm going to get it. I really like the Alien 4K.
Mm.
Very, very, very well done. And it looks fantastic. It sounds really great. And I thought Aliens is also really good as well. I know some folks have some issues with the fact that they smooth over a lot of the whatever. I think that looks great too. But this is the way to view this movie. It's just absolutely amazing. So yeah, that's what I got. It was a good year for releases, pretty good year for movies.
Yeah, I mean, just while they're sitting here, a couple of other archival things that are just The Sorcerers, Michael Reeves film with
Mhm.
Boris Karloff. What a wonderful film, which is how you do low budget but massive ideas, sensational stuff. Um, Apparently, these were staples in some parts of America on public access. The El Vampiro films from Mexico, which have been released by Indicator, which, yeah, it's Almeida Films, I believe, was the company. Abel Salazar basically playing Dracula. But it's interesting because it's just before Hammer, just before them, literally the year before, and the vampire and the vampire's coffin, and then. Patrick, also from Indicator this year, the Australian film, which terrific stuff, absolutely sensational, with a great soundtrack by Brian May. Not that Brian May. Every time that comes up, somebody will say, "Oh, I didn't know Brian May
I
was
didn't know
doing
he did
films.
that. Oh.
I didn't know he did the theme tunes for Mad Max. No, he didn't. That's another Brian May." But yeah, great psychological Australian exploitation film from the 70s there. So yeah, in fact, just this week. From Beyond in 4K from 88, which looks terrific with Barbara Crampton, Jeffrey Combs, great Stuart Gordon film. I love that. We always talk about the redundant slipcovers. Here's one that shows a before and after where the characters look great and the characters look the way they do later in the film, where they're greater or more scary, depending how you want to look at it. But yeah, that's pretty fantastic
I
use
tell
of
you,
how
I
to.
enjoy that film even more than Reanimator. I know that's usually blasphemy to say that, but
It is blasphemy, you're right. And I'm not going to be on the show again. But No, I adore Jeffrey Combs. He's one of my favorite character actors. I think Barbara Crampton's much better in that because she's got the great part. But oh, you can't beat Herbert West. Oh, so good. Yeah, but you're right. Great year for archival releases. There's always the niggles. Prices are going up. We live in privileged part of existence to be able to even talk about this kind of thing. So, let's it's not something that I take for granted and get too upset about. Some people losing their minds over slip covers and how dare they do that. You just think, life could be worse. Life could be a lot worse than it certainly is for a lot of people. So, yeah.
I think if you love film or films, I think we live in a pretty good time because I think there are a lot of companies, and we kind of went over this in a recent episode
Mhm.
where we talked about all these boutique labels. I think we live in a time where there are a lot of these great companies that are really doing some of these older and newer films justice. And for people who are serious lovers of film and
Yeah.
collectors, I mean, there's always a lot to look forward to. I mean,
Yeah.
I go on that one website that talks about the Blu-ray and 4K releases, and they update it all the time. And I go on that probably every day to look to see what's coming out because they usually give you advance notice of a couple of months when things are, just announced for release. And I go on that all the time.
Yeah, and I guess it's something we could have added to the discussion on boutiques last time, but the limited edition model means that you kind of have to stay up on it if you want to play this game.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
need to kind of stay up to date on what's out, who's releasing what, because if you want these versions, they are limited to 1,000 or
Can't sleep on
2,000 or
it.
3,000.
Yeah.
And if you miss out, you will have to go to scalpers, or you will just miss out, unfortunately.
Well, that's the
Or,
problem because they're expensive, and a lot of people are like, "Well, I'll wait till the price comes down." But the problem is, the serious collectors are going to buy them when they're out because they know they're not making 20,000 copies of them, right? A lot of these are
Yeah.
very, very limited. So when they're gone, they're gone. And then when you're going to go buy them secondhand, you're going to wind up paying two, three, four times more.
well,
Mhm.
Vinegar Syndrome, as I mentioned, are releasing hundreds of beavers, and they've got quite a lot of films. They've got hundreds of beavers in them. Let me tell you. Oh, that was a bit of a dirty joke for this channel. Anyway, but they're releasing that, and what was it, 29.99, something like that. And within an hour of it selling out, people were saying on eBay, pre-order hundreds of beavers, $120, that kind of thing. And it's not even out yet. It's not as if they've got it in hand. It's not going to be sent until January at the earliest. So people are essentially just selling their pre-order and making a markup on it. And yeah,
Or
scalpers,
selling, or selling a slipcover. To,
which we touched on last time as well, didn't we? Talking about how the slip covers, especially for a Vinegar Syndrome, can make all the difference to the value, and it makes no difference to the disc whatsoever, does it? But it's as Jamie said with his Hitchcock, he just wanted to have the wraparound that goes with those four. It didn't feel complete. We've all got that, I'm sure, to some extent, where you look at the shelf and it would always just kind of itch you that you didn't have that version. So sometimes you want to, but other times, no. I think, yeah,
look at the keep that's being put out. The
Yeah.
keep.
oh yeah. I
They
mean,
sold what,
I texted you
19,000
guys.
copies in like
Yeah, I
hours.
texted you guys to say it was out, and then within 20 minutes said it's not out anymore.
Yeah.
Um, it just flew out. But everybody knew that. I mean, I mentioned that as probably the most popular pick for collectors in terms of why is this not out on disc? Because it's not out on DVD, it's not out on Blu-ray, and it's not out in 4K. Well, it's out on all three now. We're going to be. And they sold 12,000 of the limited. I think
Around the globe.
10,000 of the standard, and now they're doing a separate run again on top of that. So, great, great. And
I'm waiting for mine. I'm not sure when it's going to be getting here, but
I
we'll
didn't
see.
get the deluxe edition. I had one in my bed. I had to show how fast it went. I had it in my cart, and when I came back, they had downgraded me to the non-radio, no ashtray in the car thing.
I mean, what's now happening is that so many of Vinegar Syndrome's releases are going for big bucks that people are now buying the slipcover versions of anything and
Mhm.
everything just to make, even if they only make $10 per time, that adds up when you're talking dozens of releases a month when you include the partner labels. So, they make $10, $10, 10, and some of them are making a lot more than 10, let's be honest. That adds up pretty fast. It's
But
it's
the
not
funny
nice,
thing about it is,
but
we discussed last week about, how back in the day a VHS would be 79 to $89 to buy a VHS tape,
Yeah.
and but ironically, if I think on the recent Vinegar Syndrome, Congo, all of the new releases, the big ones, their suggested retail cost is $65. They don't sell it at 65, but it's a 64.95 suggested retail price, which you're right back to the days of old. Now you get a ton of stuff on it and so forth and so on, but it can become a very expensive hobby, and you have to pick and choose. If do you want the slip cover or not? Do you want the extra goodies? Do you just want the film? So
yeah.
it's the decision you have to make within yourself. I mean, I would have liked to have had the slip sleeve for the keep, but hey, there you go. So I'll watch.
Yeah, and it's
It's like buying a record and looking at the cover and not playing it.
yeah, and it's exactly the same as the record industry, isn't it? Because that's happening all over. The super deluxe edition of albums rather than just the deluxe edition, and people were spending what $300 on those Jethro Tulls, and then all of a sudden they get repressed and they're not worth a tenth of that. All of a sudden. Um, it happens. Sometimes they go up in value. Sometimes a new format comes out and wipes it out completely. Look at the Dawn of the Dead Blu-rays from Arrow. You were able to get $200 for them 5 years ago. Now you can't give them away because of the 4K set from Second Sight.
I know.
So, sometimes the scalpers get what's coming to them. But
Yep. Yep.
yeah, no, I think Pete's right. We've had a really solid year. And there's, I don't know about you guys, I've already got stuff in my cart for next year
Next year is
Oh yeah.
because
never. Yep.
because it never bloody ends. It
Never
never
ends.
bloody ends.
Never ends.
First,
I mean,
I'd like to add a few more things to the pot before we close out. Once again, Seventh Victim. I Walked with a Zombie. All three of us are in full agreement with that. A great release for the year. I was impressed with Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid from Criterion.
Mhm.
Really gave it a deluxe super send off. Like I said, unreleased version of it, so forth and so on. And you can see where Criterion, as we said, they come from they have very deep pockets there. But you can see that they're starting to raise the bar. Yep, raise the bar on a lot of this stuff. And the one that's coming out, I just ordered. It's coming out December 17th, so I guess it will qualify for this year. I'm hoping they do it justice, and that is going to be John Ford, The Searchers in 4K,
Yeah,
and I
which is
think they will do the justice. And yeah, that comes out on the 17th. I'm highly anticipating that one.
and
It's just
that's
like,
Warner Archive's first ever 4K, which is rather exciting as well.
and I think it does have a fair amount of extras with it. I mean, it wasn't an overpriced item, but the Searchers with me is like Davey when he has Late Night with the Devil. I think I've got. I don't know my V. I don't know if I still have the VHS copy. I have the first DVD. I have the Blu-ray. And this across the line, and I have every single version of it. Then I decide and say this one's got to go somewhere. And one last thing, I know they came out in England with it, but they Criterion also released the Seven Samurai in 4K as well. So as everybody said, it's been a real banner year.
so that at
I
Barnes
think
and
it's
Noble
only
here.
going to get better. I
You
swear.
don't want the Criterion version. It is completely surpassed by the BFI.
Yeah,
Um,
that's how you mentioned that. Yeah.
yeah, the picture quality isn't it's not even close. But yeah, I mean, as mentioned, all the uh, outlets, all the boutiques have already announced January, February, some of them even up to March, what's coming out. And yeah, I mean, I've already got performances coming out from Criterion, Godard's King Lear, Drugstore Cowboy. There's just always something. Absolutely. Masters of the Universe, being a kid of the 80s, that's coming out. So, I'm looking forward to that coming out from 88. Yeah, there's always stuff. Never, never, ever ends. But it's
That's my
a vicious mistress, but we keep going back to her.
that's my
Before we
name.
forget, uh,
Jamie's picks as well.
Jamie's
Oh
other
yeah,
picks, Chinatown 4K, which is great. I just recently watched that. It also has the two Jakes on it. He listed the Conan Chronicles and the 4K of Bound. So those are some of his.
Yeah.
Oh, Gina Gershon and Meg Tilly. I mean,
Yeah, which
Tilly.
that's very much one of those films I just don't need on 4K. But I do like Bound. I like Bound a lot. The Conan box set was way back at the start of the year and was an absolute banger. Sensational from Arrow, one of the real hits. That sold really fast. And what was his other pick again? Sorry, his first.
Well, Chinatown.
Chinatown, yeah.
China.
Which Kino have just announced that they're doing the Two Jakes as a standalone. So that's a bit interesting, isn't it? That the Two Jakes is on there as a Blu-ray, I
Right.
think,
Yeah,
but
Blu-ray, yes.
the 4K is coming out from Kino.
Yeah.
So yeah, must have been a short-term licensing deal there because I know that Chinatown disc went out of print really fast.
Really fast. Yeah.
I mean,
So
one can only
the
imagine what the behind the door deals are made. With the, you got this for that long and this long, and once again, like what Davey said, he has the Seventh Samurai from BFI. And the thing is, I'm ordered. I had as soon as I heard Criterion, I didn't even know the BFI was coming. And it's happened so fast. It's like dealing with commodities for Christ's sake.
what a lot of them are doing now is, say, Severin announced their slate, which they did on Black Friday. 88 put out a totally unrelated social media message saying next year, at some point, we will be releasing the following films. And it just so happens that they're all the ones that are mentioned by Severin as being releases. So they're kind of saying wait for ours if you don't want to import because that's expensive on its own terms, isn't it? The import costs of if you guys are importing from over here,
But no,
it's adding on
well,
a lot
we
and
we get we
vice
get
versa.
we kind of luck out. Like I said, we have one place we may have mentioned. There's a place. I'll give him a plug. Diabolic DVD, who deals with a lot of overseas products, and basically the shipping from him, it stays within guidelines of the price of what's going anywhere else.
Yeah, but it's
Six
nowhere
dollar
near
flat
as
rate.
cheap as say a new Kino would be or a new the equivalent of a Criterion on the Barnes and Noble sale. So it's one of those, you still pay a premium. Everybody pays the piper when it comes to importing, unfortunately. But especially 4K though, it's great that 4K is not regional locked because you can make these decisions and you know because
Give him
regional
time in the
locking.
market to find other markets going. When
Yeah, the motion picture industry decided not to regional lock because rightly so, they're cutting their nose off to spite their face. Why should you regional lock? You're just cutting sales out for no good reason. CDs aren't region bloody locked. Imagine that. No, you can't hear the new Jethro at all. That's for the English people. What?
true, that's true.
Nuts.
Right.
There we go. And I'd imagine Craig's number one would have been Conan, but he's not here.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what would Christopher's number one be, do you
I don't
think?
know. Yeah, I don't know what I don't know. I'm not really sure. I would like to know though.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll see if we can get it from them. We'll put it in the comments down below.
Yeah.
So
Maybe Chris will leave a comment when he doesn't watch this video.
we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, for those of you
Maybe you'll
watching,
mention
thanks for
Judy
hanging with
Holiday
us.
film, maybe.
What's that?
Maybe you'll mention a Judy Holiday film.
You never know. You never know.
It's,
Or
yeah.
yesterday.
I doubt it, but you never know.
I know. It's full of surprises.
Thanks for being with us here this year in 2024 and sitting with us on this little recap of the year. And if you guys have checked out any new releases or films, put them down there in the comments below. And we'll see you in 2025. Can't talk. It's been a long.
25.
See you in 2025 here on the Monsters Den. Till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn
All the
time.
damn
For those of
time.
you who are heading to Newburgh, New York this weekend to come see us at SOT Fall Fest, the Monsters Den is doing our little panel discussion at 4:30 in the afternoon at the Newburgh Brewery, so don't miss it. And we'll see you then. For Davey and Dan, I'm Pete. See you next time here on the Monsters Den in a couple weeks. Take care, everybody.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas,
Christmas.
Happy Holidays.
Happy New Year.
Uh,
Happy Easter.
that too.
See you at the Epiphany.
Yes.
Happy Halloween.
All right.
All right, good.